Monday, September 25. We are redeemed for community. As you read Ephesians chapter 2, seek to answer the following question. What has God done for us through his Son, Jesus Christ? Well, let's read Ephesians chapter 2. And you he made alive, who were dead in trespasses and sins, in which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit who now works in the sons of disobedience, among whom also we all once conducted ourselves in the lusts of the flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, just as the others. But God, who is rich in mercy, because of his great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved, and raised us up together, and made us sit together in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus, that in the ages to come he might show the exceeding riches of his grace in his kindness toward us in Christ Jesus. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. Therefore, remember that you, once Gentiles in the flesh, who were called uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision made in the flesh by hands, that at that time you were without Christ, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now, in Christ Jesus, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace, who has made both one and has broken down the middle wall of separation, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, that is, the law of commandments contained in ordinances, so as to create in himself one new man from the two, thus making peace, and that he might reconcile them both to God in one body through the cross, thereby putting to death the enmity. And he came and preached peace to you who were afar off, and to those who were near. For through him we both have access by one Spirit to the Father. Now, therefore, you are no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints, and members of the household of God, having been built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom the whole building, being fitted together, grows into a holy temple in the Lord, in whom you also are being built together for a dwelling place of God in the Spirit. But God, these two words must be the most hope-filled ones known to humankind. In Ephesians 2, verses 1 to 10, Paul describes the grim past of his audience. Sharing the plight of all humanity, they were bent upon rebellion against God, their lives dominated by sin and Satan, as we read in verses 1 to 3. But God, who is rich in mercy, and what did God do for them and for us? 1. He made us alive with Christ. Christ's resurrection is our own. 2. He raised us up with Christ. Christ's ascension is our own. 3. In heaven he seated us with Christ. Christ's coronation is our own, as you read in Ephesians 2, 4 to 7. We are not just bystanders to the cosmos-shifting events of Christ's life. God takes these remarkable actions not because of any merit in us, but because of his grace, as we read in verses 8 and 9. And he intends believers to live in solidarity with Jesus and practice good works, in verse 10. If Ephesians 2, verses 1 to 10, teaches that we live in solidarity with Jesus, Ephesians 2, 11 to 20, teaches that we live in solidarity with others as part of his church. Jesus' death has both vertical benefits, establishing the believer's relationship with God in verses 1 to 10, and horizontal ones, cementing our relationships with others in verses 11 to 22. Through his cross, Jesus demolishes all that divides Gentile believers from Jewish ones, including the misuse of the law to widen the gulf in verses 11 to 18. Jesus also builds something, an amazing new temple composed of believers. Gentiles, once excluded from worship in sacred places of the temple, now join Jewish believers in becoming one. We too become part of God's church, a holy temple in the Lord, as we read in verses 19 to 22. Through the grace of God, you have the privilege of living this day in solidarity with Jesus and your fellow believers. Ephesians 2:8-10 has played a role in the conversion of many. Martin Luther found in these verses a grace that won his heart, and he discovered as well some central affirmations of the Reformation. Salvation comes by faith alone, through grace alone, by Christ alone, and to the glory of God alone. Let's read that again. Salvation comes by faith alone, through grace alone, by Christ alone, and to the glory of God alone. In 1738, 18 days after experiencing conversion in London's Aldersgate Street, John Wesley preached at Oxford University, offering a cry from the heart and the manifesto of a new movement. His texts, Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 8. This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful.